Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We all know about this guy. We know recently that he did a speech, which was interesting, in front of some politicians in Washington, of course, and he was censored at this censorship hearing, which was very interesting. So if you know about him, and I'm almost sounding like him. He has a very raspy voice. You know he's running for president of the United States. You know that a lot of people are going with him because his father was Bobby Kennedy, who was assassinated when he was running for president, and his uncle was John F. Kennedy. And then he had Edward Kennedy in the family too. So he's running for president of the United States as a Democrat. His polls have been going up and down. He started out kind of strong. People kind of believed in him. The more he talked, I think the more that his polls started going down. So the more that people heard him, the more they said, maybe he's not the person that he says that he is. But recently he did the speech, and it was about censorship. And a lot of people are talking about that, where they love what he said. But as that time has gone on and he's been appearing on different shows, I'd love to have him come on my show, Keeping It Honest, with yours truly, Anthony Parker. I put it out there. He is now, his polls have been going down. So what we're going to do, we're going to reenact this speech in case you missed it. So picture me, again, close your eyes, as I do the speech, and I attempt to do the speech that was attempted in front of this committee by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., dealing with censoring a censorship hearing. So close your eyes, everybody. And I am now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing. We have to stop trying to destroy each other. I was censored not just by the Democratic administration. I was censored by the Trump administration. They had to invent a new word called malinformation to censor people like me. Malinformation is information that is true, but is inconvenient to the government, that they don't want people to hear. I want to put aside my written statement for a moment and address one of the points brought up, an important point by the ranking member, that this body ought to be concerning itself with issues that directly impact the American people, like the raising price of groceries, 76% over the past 2 years for basic food stuff, the war in Ukraine, inflation issues, the border issues, and many other issues that concern us as a nation. We can't do that without the First Amendment, without debate. When I gave my speech, my announcement speech in Boston about 2 months ago, YouTube, I talked about all those issues. I focused on groceries. I focused on the fact that working class people can no longer afford to live in this country. I talked about inflation, all the issues that deeply concern you, and that you devoted your career to elevating those issues. 5 minutes into my speech, when I was talking about Paul Revere, YouTube deplatformed me. I didn't talk about vaccine in that speech. I didn't talk about saying that was a verbatim subject. I just was talking about my example in my campaign and things. The conversation we ought to be having with each other about Americans. I was shut down. That is why the First Amendment is important. Debate, congenial, respectful debate is a fertilizer, the water, and the sunlight for our democracy. We need to be talking to each other. This is the letter that many of you signed, many of my fellow Democrats. I spent my life in this party. I devoted my life to the values of this party. 102 people signed this. This itself is evidence of the problem that this hearing was convened to address. This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing. And by the way, censorship is anti-ethical in our party, anti-ethical and appalling to my father and my uncle, to FDR and Harry Truman, to Thomas Jefferson. It is the basics for democracy. It sets us apart from all of the previous forms of government. We need to be able to talk. And the First Amendment was not written for easy speech. It was written for the speech nobody likes you for. I was censored not just by the Democratic administration, I was censored by the Trump administration. I was the first person censored by the chairman pointed out, by the Biden administration, 2 days after he came into office. And by the way, they had to invent a new word called malinformation to censor people like me. There was no malinformation on my Instagram account. Everything I put on that account was cited and sourced. The peer-reviewed publications of government databases. No one has ever pointed to a single piece of misinformation I published. I was removed for something that they called malinformation. Malinformation is information. You think about that. That is true, but is inconvenient to the government that they don't want people to hear, and an anti-ethical to the values of our country. After I announced my campaign for presidency, it became more difficult for people to censor me outright. So now I'm subject to this new form of censorship, which is called targeted propaganda, where people simply purgate like anti-vax. I've never been anti-vaccine, but everyone in this room probably believes I am, and I have been, because that's the prevailing narrative. Anti-citizenship, racism. These are the most appalling, disgusting purgatives, and they're applied to me to silence me, because people don't want me to have that conversation about the war, about groceries, about inflation, about the war on the middle class in this country, that we need to be better. And by the way, I want to say this on the record. In my entire life, and I'm under oath, in my entire life, I have never uttered a phrase that was either racist or anti-Semitic. I have spent my life fighting, my professional career, fighting for Israel, for my protection of Israel. I have a better record on Israel than anybody in the chamber today. I'm the only person who has publicly objected to the $2 or $2 billion payment that the Biden administration is making to Iran, which is a genocidal program. I am the only one who objected to that. I fought more ferociously for Israel than anybody, but I am being censored here through smears and misrepresentations of what I said, through lies and association, which is a tactic that we all thought had been discredited and dispensed after the McCarthy hearings in the 1950s. But you think about this. These same weapons are now being deployed against me to silence me. I know many of the people who wrote this letter. I don't believe there's a single person who signed this letter who believes I am anti-Semitic. I do not believe it. There's no evidence of that. I'm going to say something more important, and it goes directly to what you talked about, ranking member, which is the need, this toxic polarization that is destroying our country today, and how do we deal with that? This kind of division is more dangerous for our country than any time since the American Civil War. And how do we deal with that? Every Democrat on the committee believes that we need to end that polarization. Do you think you can do that by censoring people? I am telling you, you cannot. That only aggravates and elevates the problem. We need to start being kind to each other. We need to start being respectful to each other. We need to start restoring the confidence to this chamber and the rest of America. But it has to start here. My uncle, Edward Kennedy, had more legislation with his name on it than any senator in U.S. history. Why is that? Because he was able to reach across the aisle, because he didn't deal in insults. He didn't deal in trying to censor people. He brought on people who were anti-ethical to what he believed in. He came home almost every weekend with people like Orrin Hatch to our compound in Haven Point. At that time, Orrin Hatch, to me, was like Darth Vader. I was an environmentalist, and I would say, why is Teddy bringing this guy home? He was effective because he understood that country and respect and kindness and compassion and empathy for other people is the way that we restore the function in this chamber. But more importantly, we need to give an example in the leadership of our country of being respectful to each other. If you think I said something that's anti-Semitic, let's talk about the details. I'm telling you, all the things I am accused of right now by you and in this letter are distortions and misrepresentations. I didn't say those things. There's fragments that I said, but I denounce anybody who uses the words that I have said to imply something that is negative about people who are Jewish. So, enough said. And boy, after that, you really have to clear your throat. So that was, wow. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And that was a speech on censorship and why he's being censored at a censorship hearing. So if you want to hear more of that story, go online and type that in. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s censorship speech. So anyway, so after that speech, which was not too long ago, people kind of made fun of him, but said he had, I guess, the energy and the passion when he said that. So he started popping up on a couple of shows, a couple of streaming shows. And recently he's been on shows where I think he's picking who to go to and who not, because some people are upset with him as far as Jewish issues are concerned, and some of them are saying they wanted to debate him. So I saw him on a streaming show, and this was a barbershop show. He went to this barbershop, saw parts of the show, and it was a black barbershop, and he was there. So check that one out and see if he's talking where you understand it. So his campaign manager is Dennis Kucinich, which I really loved years ago. What got me into politics was that I saw Dennis Kucinich, and he called him a boy wonder. He was the, I guess back in the 70s, he was the youngest mayor in Cleveland. He did a lot of things in Cleveland. Some people liked, some people didn't. He ran for president a couple times. I was there when he was running for president. The one time, very gracious man, but now he's a spokesperson for campaign manager for Robert F. Kennedy. So some people are seeing, okay, Robert F. Kennedy, what exactly are you trying to do? You talk about Israel, you talk about Jews, but you upset people when you talk about things. Are you trying to run? What statement are you trying to make? You being on that party, are you hurting or helping who's running for office now? My big thing is go on some more shows. Go on some shows that aren't exactly mainstream where, you know, they can just ask you softball questions. Go on some of those shows where they can ask you the hard questions, where they can talk to you about the censorship speech and not just say, you just did it. So for people who may have missed that speech when he did it, I gave you a little bit of reenactment. Now my throat's a little bit sore because I'm trying to reenact his voice. And let me know what you thought of his speech. We would love to have Robert F. Kennedy on our show to talk. So we're going to get in contact with his campaign manager, some people, to see if we can get him on. We're not going to say it's impossible, because when you have people like him running, he thinks it's possible to become president. I think it's possible he can be on our show. So we'll see what happens. Have any questions or comments? You can email yours truly. It's parkerman2011 at gmail.com. Again, parkerman2011 at gmail.com. You can text us. Telephone number is 216-702-3718, 216-702-3718. And you've been watching a little segment of Keeping It Honest with yours truly, Anthony Parker. Keep your head up, never look down, always believe in yourself. And therein will lie your answer.